exactly. That's what I'm trying to get him to just get in on the link, and then I can move him.
Move him into a panelist, yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't have his email address at my fingertips.
I have his contact information, so I'll send it right now.
Okay, thank you. I just
Very good.
forwarded you the.
Why don't we continue with public comment?
Okay. Okay, Justin, we're ready for you.
Thank you. So, oh, no problem. Thank you. I do want to know if it's gonna be okay. Tracy, I think I'd like to see if we can, there way I can help you, train you on Zoom. So, Amy, there way we can do sometime, not now, but maybe this week, if you can too busy. The second one is, I was walking around in the neighborhood and I see a treat, a crack treat on the highway street in Dawson Way. And I think I remember, I hear that maybe we need to pay the treat all the Dawson Way. I lived here when I too, a long time ago. We had a brand new paying tree, and I think it's time to get new paid tree going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
And the third one is Brett Cooper. I just see the sign for that for house sign up. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Any other speakers?
I have no hands raised at this time.
All right, very good. And we'll proceed with our agenda on business item number 1.
All right.
The Council Economic Development Forum.
Thank you, Mayor and
Council
Council.
provide direction to staff regarding the completion of the draft economic development plan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I wanted to first thank our special guests tonight. We have a panel of experienced developers who have graciously agreed to be here and share their perspectives with the city and with staff regarding economic development activity. And we have Steve Brock, Buzz Butler, Rick Hess, Ross Hillesheim, Ernie Nodell, Terry Mcgrath, and then also Valerie Zizak-Moraes from the American Indian Chamber of Commerce. And we appreciate their willingness to spend their time with us this evening and share their history and experiences with us. Both Brett Cooper and I have spent some time over the last couple of months really looking at our draft economic development plan. This plan was started way back in 2016 and 2017 and really is a good plan in the sense that it's really comprehensive. It creates a lot of ideas and a lot of, I think, energy around different possible actions, but it also is really, really broad. And it really tries to do a lot of things. And as we were looking at it, and this was at the council's request, because the council had been wondering about the status of this plan. It was never adopted by the city council. It was still in its draft form. And we began looking at this plan, we came to the conclusion that it was probably trying to do too much. And it was really, really big. All the ideas in here are really good ideas, but it also really reflected probably a much larger city, a city with a full economic development department, with a director and analysts, and really wasn't scaled necessarily for the size of the city or the size of the community that we had. So as we began looking at this draft plan, we came to the conclusion that we needed to really pare this down in order for it to really be actionable. There's 110 actions in this plan. There's 4 goals, 12 strategies, 110 actions. And there was really just too many things going on for it to be operationalized. So we started to take a look at what might be the best way to finish this plan. And we also began to really realize, we needed some expertise in this. Nobody on city staff and nobody on the city council is a commercial developer. We all come from different walks of life with different experiences, but none of us do what the folks on the screen here do for a living. And so, although some of the folks here on the screen were part of the process to develop this plan, we felt it really important and would get a lot of benefit from engaging them and getting their perspectives on where things stand today in development, where things stand with American Canyon specifically. And one of the things that we know is that in the development picture, the city plays a role, an important role, but it's not the whole picture. There are a number of other aspects outside of the city's control and outside where the city plays really no role in it that the development community must take into consideration. And we probably weren't the best position to explain all that because we don't do this for a living. And those outside city control aspects would really benefit from others' expertise. So we have engaged these folks to come and help explain some of their experience and what other aspects besides the local city control go on in a project. And we're looking for improvement. We're looking to optimize the way we do things so that we don't unintentionally make the other aspects of development more difficult than it has to be. And we're really trying to gain information and have the best situation for American Canyon. And so the other part of what Brent and I have been focusing on a little bit is to take aspects of this plan that focus on the city organization, as a client, really. Like, if we were going to really try to maximize city revenue, maximize the city's financial situation, how might we do that? How might we drive additional revenue? The city has some really unique characteristics as far as its revenue situation. Primarily property tax, sales tax, and TOT are primary discretionary revenues we receive, with property tax being the largest source of that. And where we came from after incorporation and how our property taxes is shared, we actually receive a much higher percentage than some surrounding cities or is common in other areas. And so we also began to look at that as an opportunity. So when properties are sold and their assessed value increases, the city receives a relatively larger percentage of that property tax increment than our other cities around us. And so that's really an opportunity. And when you combine that with the fact that we do have a large amount of land that is undeveloped or underdeveloped now, or maybe has an assessed value that's pre-Prop 13, it's another opportunity to kind of look and say, if those areas are redeveloped, their assessed value goes up beyond where they were pre-Prop 13, but number two, we get a higher percentage share of that than others. So really opportunity areas for city revenue growth. What we wanted to do in our exploration of this was to bring in these experts to help, and we have a couple of questions that we'd like to have their input. So tonight the format is going to be we're going to turn it over to our panelists, and we have a couple of questions. We're going to have each panelist give an opportunity to share their background and experience a little bit, and then answer the first question that is identified in the staff report. And we'll go through the 7 panelists. And then we'll come back to question number 2 and kind of again in a round robin way ask those 7 panelists question number 2. At that point, we're going to open up to public comment to see if there are any members of the audience who would like to ask any questions or offer any feedback. And then after closing public comment, we're going to turn it back over to the council and have the council have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments or feedback. Ultimately, we'd like to get a sense of where the council wants to go as we try and finalize this report. There is always the possibility we could just adopt the draft as is. We think it kind of creates some unrealistic expectations and really stands a chance of just sitting on a shelf and gathering dust. And so we'd like to focus it to a smaller document, a real actionable document focused on, again, a return on investment for the city as the organization. But we also want to hear what our development partners have to say and what their experiences are. So with that, we're going to kind of go just in alphabetical order as we're listening.
Let me just do a little welcoming on board for everybody. It's great to have representation from our development community, your knowledge and expertise. You certainly have done some rather tremendous things in American Canyon, and to have our Chamber of Commerce represented here as well. Certainly that's what we're concerned with our land use is get the best value from it, and certainly to reach markets and to grow that base for American Canyon. So really appreciate all your contributions to the city of American Canyon. And I look forward to having a very robust conversation this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. It's a great segue. We're going to turn over to our panelists now. We'll go in alphabetical order. And Mr. Brock, Steve, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. Oh, David, I'm sorry.
Mr. Hawley, I think a lot of us are familiar with the folks. I think for the public, it would be great to just have a brief intro for all of them, and that way they can just kind of go into what they need to talk about. If you can go through that list.
Yeah, I'm going to give each of them an opportunity here now to introduce themselves. Steve, would you mind introducing yourself and talk a little about your experience developing in American Canyon? And I think you're on mute, so we're going to have to help you unmute there.
He has to unmute, yeah.
Oh. There we go.
There you go.
My name is Steve Brock. We've been developing American Canyon for 20 years or so. We build the ugly industrial buildings. We don't sell very often. And so you don't get the bump in the property tax. We create a good amount of the traffic, and our employees struggle to be able to afford to live at American Canyon. So we're looking for a way to try to remedy that and try to be reasonable corporate citizens.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Buzz Butler, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi there, my name is Buzz Butler, and I've been working in the area for about 30 years, specifically in American Canyon for 20 years. Actually, it was 20 years ago this month when Mark granted me sainthood for tying the Taper property and getting a contract. I'm still waiting for that, Mark, by the way.
Hey, you should have anticipated that I was going to become a politician and therefore discounted any promises I offered you. Sorry.
So the project was a 57-acre mixed-use master plan project. It ended up about 364 apartments. The Walmart Supercenter, which is about 180,000 feet. 15 total buildings, including a 101-room hotel, north of 30 tenants, and currently building the last building within the development for North Bay Medical, and that should be done in the spring. We've enjoyed working in the community. I hope we've been a good community citizen. Early on, I was involved in helping start the new Tech High School, which then has its footprint all over the high school in American Canyon because the same architect built that one. We were involved in that. And then early on, I was more involved in the chamber than I am today. But I really loved what Valerie's doing for the chamber. And we love the town. We love the community. And there's one other project on the horizon, and then I think that's officially it.
Thank you, Buzz. Again, welcome. Rick Hess, would you mind introducing yourself, a little bit of your history?
Good evening, Rick Hess. Our family's owned property in American Canyon, commonly known as Oda Hills, since roughly 1984. My brother ran his general engineering firm up until last year when he retired. I came down to American Canyon in 2000, created and developed Canyon Plaza 1, about 50,000 square feet. 2002, we did Canyon Plaza 2, another 26,000 feet. In 2005, we created Canyon Corners, which is across from Safeway, another 50,000 square feet. We have about 70 tenants in those shopping centers. We retained ownership and do all of our in-house property management of those facilities. In roughly 2014, I gained approval from the city for Lumbar Crossing industrial building, which is about 300,000 square feet. And then just recently, September this year, we were granted approval for 291 units at Oat Hill. And I am currently a board member with the Chamber of Commerce. My office is here in American Canyon, and I would say that we're extremely active on a daily basis, trying to make American Canyon the best it can be. And our goal is to try to help develop properties along in the Broadway district specific plan. And we also are currently engaged with a company bringing affordable housing. That application has been submitted, should be at the council by, or to the planning commission in December, a 66 unit project next to the tennis courts right there off of Broadway. And we're looking at other opportunities along Broadway.
Great, Rick, thank you. And again, welcome. Next up, we have Ross Hillesheim. Ross, would you mind introducing yourself and a little bit of your history here?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Hawley. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Ross Hillesheim. Our firm, California Capital Investment Group, we're based out of Oakland. We're a pretty small firm, although we've been in business for about 30 years. Historically, I guess some of the things that you'll see California Capital Group in the news about would be the master developer role at the Port of Oakland, and then more recently, the Concord Naval Weapons Station in Contra Costa County. Our firm is pretty small. I think we are well known for working with cities and counties in public-private partnerships. Specifically to American Canyon, we're new to American Canyon. We've been here about 2 years. We own the property at the corner of Napa Junction and Lumbar. It's about a 2-acre site. And we're now under construction for the hotly contested Circle K gas station. I'm sure everyone's heard a lot about that. We've looked at a couple other properties within the Broadway district specific plan. I feel like I'm pretty familiar with that plan. And then I guess, personally for me, a fair amount of you know me. I think a couple things I should point out are I'm 38 years old. I'm a millennial. I think I'm the only millennial on this panel. I personally grew up in a tow truck yard and at a gas station in Monterey County. My father's blue collar. And I currently sit on the Contra Costa County Planning Commission. Good to be here, everyone.
Hey, Ross, thank you very much. And again, welcome.
Ross, you're not the only millennial on this panel. Thank you very much.
We have one other claim.
Who's even younger than you? Just saying.
I love it.
We'll move over next to Ernie Nodell. Ernie, would you mind introducing yourself, a little bit of your history?
Sure. Hi, I'm a partner with Orchard Partners based in Lafayette, California. I'm one of those people that used to drive through American Canyon to get up into the Upper Valley and visit some of the wineries for 20 some odd years. And then my partners and I purchased about 218 acres of land just directly south of the Napa Airport. And over the last 7.5 years, we've been developing the Napa Logistics Park. So we've created a few buildings and brought in some national and international tenants into American Canyon, including IKEA with their very first dedicated customer delivery station, a 646,000 square foot building. We completed our second building was a 702,000 square foot logistics building, and Biaggi Brothers currently occupies half of that building. More recently, we developed one of Amazon's largest delivery stations, a last mile delivery station on 58 acres of our park. And they're in operation currently and enjoying good success at this location. And then lastly, the last part of our development, we actually sold a parcel to PG&E, and they're going to be developing and have started developing their service center for the region. They're going to be amalgamating or combining both their Napa and Vallejo facilities, and they chose American Canyon, and they chose our site. So that's underway, and we've enjoyed all of our good work and success and associations with the city staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie. Again, welcome. Next, we'll move over Terry Mcgrath. Terry, would you mind introducing yourself and a little bit of your history?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. All my fellow developers, it's nice to see you all. So I got a question for Ross. Since I'm almost twice as old as you, does that count as 2 millennials?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So we doubled the number on the panel then. Let's see. I've been in American Canyon since 2004, working on Watson Ranch. It took me 17 years to get my approvals. I've actually only been developing in American Canyon for 4 months, since early July, since it took 17 years to get my entitlements. The project, as most of you know, is plus or minus around 1,500 homes, 200-room hotel, and a very large event center built around the old ruins. We're under construction on all the master backbone infrastructure, and some of the deals that we've done recently. We just sold or donated 6.6 acres to the Pacific companies, and they've just started moving in their modular units that they're building in Boise, and they've stored about 25 of them on site to build a 186 unit project right there at the corner of Rio Del Mar and Loop Road. And that will be very low, moderate, affordable housing, studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3. I believe it's the largest affordable project ever built in Napa County. And they're a great group, and they're doing some really fine work in the affordable space in California, especially on the true modular design and fabrication. And then we've sold or have sold, we'll be selling about 320 lots to D.R. Horton. They're under construction on the first 98 homes on parcels 14 and 15, which is the land that borders Vintage between the old ruins and Vintage Ranch. And then we're also in contract to sell another 220 homes to them, which we'll be doing the finished lots on those and parceling that out starting mid next year. And then we're working on another transaction for 7 and 9 to bring in a completely different product type, much more dense, probably somewhere in the 12.5, 13 per acre. And it will come underneath in terms of pricing and design and focus in the market. It'll come underneath both the housing product being designed on parcel 10 as well as the ones on 14 and 15. And again, all this is basically, it's affordable by design, separate and apart from what specific companies are doing. It's workforce housing. I was joking with the city, St. Helena City Council member, I think yesterday or this morning at coffee, and they were talking about, the struggle up valley with jobs housing ballast and workforce housing and, balancing their arena and everything else. And I said, well, in American Canyon, in the last 6 months, we've at least moved 700 homes, a heck of a lot closer to up valley since they're now in southern Napa County. So we'll continue to build out the project, and like a lot of the guys on this call here, I'm a long-term owner, and I've developed probably almost every imaginable product type except for retail and building single-family homes. Again, thanks for having us here tonight.
Thank you, Terry, and welcome again. Lastly, we have Valerie Zach-Price with the American Canyon Chamber of Commerce. Valerie.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm really glad I was able to be part of this panel. I think this is a great topic, and I'm glad we're all coming together. I run the Chamber of Commerce here. I'm the president CEO. I've been working with the Chamber for 3 years. I've really learned that this job is really just not a one-size-fits-all. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and working together with our business community, our residential community, and just helping solve the needs, whatever comes up. So, I'll go in a little bit more depth later on about what the actual chamber does, but, I'm just thankful to be here and to be part of this panel tonight.
That's great. Thank you, Valerie. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so now that we've been through our introductions, we wanted to get into this panel discussion. We have really two main questions that are on our mind. And the first of which was this, again, realization that we play an important but are not the entire part of the picture for the development process. And we really wanted to get some better insight as to those other factors. We have a pretty good understanding of land use and zoning and all those sorts of things that we do control, but there are many other things that are outside of city control. We wanted to have a better perspective about that. So this first question, I'll start back with the order we were going for introductions. This first question I'll start over with you, Steve, is, of the factors that are not within city control, what are some of those other factors? What are the really important ones? How do you make business decisions for stuff that doesn't involve land use or zoning or that kind of thing?
Well, the other people probably won't be as blunt as me, but I think that a developer who comes to American Canyon better be too stupid to quit. And the reason I say that is that I think that the city has far more control than you guys recognize. And in our business, the lenders are the same. And so when we tell them things are going to happen and it doesn't happen for a long period of time, that accountability is extremely important. Okay. And I harp about it all the time. Like Green Island Road, I've been hearing about that since I had hair. And so those things make it difficult to continue to sell American Canyon. And like Ernie and those guys, they've done a great job. But we were there 25 years ago, and American Canyon threw us away like we were pikers. And now we're coming with the Hess and the Laird property. And I think Terry will substantiate this, and the other guys most likely. The biggest problem in American Canyon, or one of the problems, the biggest is that's best and all that stuff subjective. But what happens is that it takes as much effort typically for a big deal as it does a small deal. And whether it's annexing Watson Ranch or working in conjunction with the county, these larger deals, you have to look 10, 15 years out, okay? Everybody loves Hess for a road, okay? But to be able to afford to put the level of infrastructure in that you guys want, whether it be an investor, and understand, we don't use investor money, okay? It's us. And when you allocate or commit to these projects, you have to be able to see them through. Everybody says, oh, let's be afraid. We've been afraid of the Airport Land Use Commission forever. Let's don't be afraid of anybody. Look, anybody on this call that doesn't tell you they love American Canyon, that's the first lie, and it's never the last. Okay? American Canyon's a good place. Okay? It's good enough to own for the long term. It's good enough to be a part of, and everybody should treat it that way. But there has to be a vision and a blend of all this stuff. The stuff on the Broadway specific plan is extremely expensive and busted into a million pieces. And it's not the city's fault, but what happens is it moves along. All these junk lords and slumlords, all of a sudden they want double retail. They want to charge the developed price for the land, okay? And it makes it tough for the retail guys. As you know, we're the poorest of all these guys, so we've always had to go to places that nobody else wanted. Mark helped us get a bridge across the slough back there. Everybody had thrown that land away. Okay, everybody had written off the land where Ernie those guys built. And as you can see, guys who know what they're doing can get it done and make it productive. There's very few garage doors left on the couch property. But I can tell you in 2002, when I met Rick, the couch property was a rough place to go. And I just think, you know, when we told them the school had to go there in 2002, those people would argue with a sign. Okay, we had all the science. So I just think that there has to be a vision and there has to be follow-up for the infrastructure, you know, and some things are looked at like, well, here's what we would like as government officials, but in the business world, it doesn't have a chance. And I think that every developer on here cares about American Canyon, because how American Canyon goes is how they go. If there's a problem, you know, if Buzz's bank's getting robbed all the time, people say, hey, Buzz, you got a problem here. You know, the shoe store, whoever's gonna go there. If we're lousy operators of our industrial buildings, it all, you know, we're all at the center of this. I mean, Terry, you gotta take your hat off to Terry. He moved the earth to make his deal happen. And I mean, as developers, we got egos and feelings, and you gotta take your hat off to the guy. I mean, Buzz did a hell of a job. And I think you guys sometimes lose sight of that people are, I think in general, people lose sight that we're a weird class. We're all corporate citizens, okay? You can charge, beat up, talk about behind our backs and all the things that go with that, and we don't vote, okay? And at the end of the day, we have to pay whatever you make it. I think a better relationship with the development community and some long-term vision would go a long way. But look, I have a self-serving pointed view, and I'm sure these other guys will shed a better light on it. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you. Buzz, outside of the land use and zoning type aspects, what are the kind of things that you look at in your development process?
So the question is about challenges, right, outside your forces.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the utility companies that you have to, you know, get through to get these projects approved, I think Caltrans gets first place. But I you know, it's a real challenge. It's a real hurdle. It's something that we had to deal with head on. I think the city has to address that. You know, you've done your studies, you've determined that 21% of the traffic is yours and 79% of the traffic is others. And, but we pay 100%. And there's a couple manufacturing buildings up valley that might be called wineries, and I think they're north of 700 that don't pay any traffic impact fees. So that's clearly one thing that's the elephant in the room in Napa County. You know, demographics are a big challenge for us in retail. Having, you know, the homes out at Watson Ranch, Terry's getting going, and the apartment projects, and then the hotel projects, significant positive impact to trying to attract more retail service businesses. You know, we've never really been in the soft goods business. That kind of got washed out in 08. Project Napa Junction overall is, you know, survived COVID fairly well. We lost more to a bankruptcy and a merger. But when people ask why, how come I can't get this tenant or that tenant, you know, it's not as if we can choose who we want. They choose us. And they choose us based on our population density, our household income numbers, education of the population. You know, so we have a population of 21,000 on its way to 30,000, and we're sandwiched between Vallejo and Napa. You know, Vallejo's been desperate for a Trader Joe's for 20 years, and you know they're 140,000 population. But the demographics will get better as the apartment projects come in, these more hotels come in, these tourists do spend money. So that's been a challenge. Building costs, significant challenge. I would say that those retail buildings in Napa Junction, probably twice as expensive today as they were 15 years ago. And yet your rents are about the same. That's a big challenge. Your garbage rates that the tenants pay, you think you can pass through your common area charges, your taxes, your garbage, your utilities, but at the end of the day, the tenant can only pay so much out of their own pocket. And so that ends up impacting your rents. That North Bay Medical Building, when you throw in their tenant improvements that they're putting in for their offices and their medical procedure, that might be $1,000 a foot. It's a really expensive building. You have to hit obviously all the California energy efficiency, the glass, the roof, the walls. Then you have all the seismic stuff, the detention requirements, the parking lots where you have underground bunkers, and it's expensive. Again, we're not necessarily getting the same rents. We, as Steve mentioned, we all love the town, we all love the community, and it is, with remote work, Zoom, folks are flocking to Napa. We want them to come to us as well. And, they're fleeing, places like San Francisco, not because of the crazy politics, because it's always been crazy, San Francisco, right? That's what we're kind of like. They're fleeing because of the safety. They're fleeing because of the crime. And to me, that needs to be topic number one, A1, support our police, do whatever we can do to be aggressive, proactive, license plate reader cameras on the highway, whatever we can do. We have 20 cameras in Napa Junction with several license plate reader cameras out there. And these police that we have in American Canyon are incredible. So that's something that's really important, the safety issue. That's pretty much all my comments.
Thank you, Buzz. Really appreciate it. Rick, same question over to you. Outside of the land use and zoning kind of things, what sort of factors or issues do you take into consideration when having to make business decisions?
Well, I would echo a lot of what Buzz said, and certainly because of our retail connection there, we face a lot of the same issues. But I listed maybe 4 items that are what I think are challenges. Number 1 was Caltrans. Number 2 is and this is going to be mostly geared towards a Broadway district plan, the PG&E overhead utilities, the ALUC, Airport Land Use Commission, and the lack of infrastructure that we currently have. The other those would be 4 outside challenges that are very costly, very time consuming, and very difficult to get through. I would also say that, the requirements by agencies, as an example, like our biologists, before we could start, before we will be able to break ground up at Oat Hill, we're going to have to go out and do a Swanson Hawk survey, and you have to do it in 2 consecutive quarters and hope that you don't have a problem. When I was working with Steve out there at the eucalyptus, we were trying to clear that site and make sure there wasn't any hazardous materials buried somewhere, and we tore all those trees down, and every 2 weeks they come out and do nesting surveys, and it's just a real challenge, and I don't know how to get around that. Well, what we face that we're comfortable with is, whether it be the Bay Area air quality or the water situation or whatever these outside agencies, typically we deal with those once we have a project approved, and it's just part of the course of trying to figure out what the flavor of the month is with the detention ponds and the bioswales. You know, that changes on an ongoing basis. So, but those are things that we can work with our civil engineering and really control. The things that I think are important for the city, that the city can help in is, and maybe to back up a little bit what Buzz is saying, is we have a Broadway district plan. Now, the NBTA doesn't necessarily agree with our 6 lanes, and you know, now there's the idea of roundabouts and, you know, 2 lanes and, you know, a lot of nonsense that that they're not really taking into consideration what the city spent, you know, years trying to figure out. You know, and I'll just say it once without elaborating. I can't imagine a roundabout at Donaldson Way, and if I'm going northbound and try to turn left to go down Donaldson Way at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, how are you possibly going to go across 2 or 3 or 4 lanes of traffic to make that happen? I don't see it. Maybe there's some kind of magical engineering that I don't know about, but it just doesn't make sense to me personally. But I think that what we can do is, we know what we want for the sidewalks and street landscaping along Broadway. We know that whether you're on the east side or west side of 29, virtually every property is a right turn in and a right turn out. That means every property needs an acceleration and deceleration lane. To go through the encroachment permit is obviously, and the city, you guys know, you've dealt with Caltrans, it takes forever. I believe that if the city were to come up with a plan, a master plan for the Broadway district, and get a general approval from Caltrans, so that as each development project comes in, we already have the guidelines. We already know what those acceleration, deceleration lanes would be, how wide they are, and we will have already satisfied one time everything that we need for an encroachment permit from Caltrans. That could significantly help the developers, and whether it be any of us or any new potential developers coming in looking at Broadway and all these small infill projects. The second thing is, you know, there are some properties along 29 that have PG&E overhead lines, some don't, depends on which side of the highway and which property. If we wait to underground all these utilities as called out for in the Broadway plan until each parcel develops, 40 years from now, we're still going to have utility lines standing somewhere. It makes more sense to me that something that the city can do is do a master plan, go to PG&E and get a master plan of undergrounding all of the utilities along the highway, and then you know, whether it be in lieu of fees, where it's practical, put it underground. Where it's not practical, or in some cases where you have some high power lines that are going to be extremely expensive to underground, then let's pay a fee and collect, and then we start at one end, and the city then, you know, once it's all approved from PG&E, then we don't spend months and months coming up with a design, trying to get approval. It's already approved, and then we as developers, we can go in and execute. I think that is a huge benefit for, if you're looking to, how do we clean up 29, and a master agreement with Caltrans for ingress, egress, undergrounding the utilities, and then thirdly, I've been preaching for 10 years, 15 years, we need a drainage study for Highway 29. Everybody that's coming along is scratching their head, and right now, the best we can do is come up with makeshift drainage plans that obviously will work, but in the long term, if we can get that drainage study done, I think that it might mean going downstream and enlarging some of the existing storm drain pipes. It may mean that we need to find a location to have some detention ponds and some bioswale ponds maybe, but I'm not sure what that is, and the engineers are going to know that better than I. I just know that is a huge challenge in developing properties along Highway 29. But I do believe, and certainly listening to the NVTA, that meeting a couple of weeks ago, and further conversations, I believe there are state funding for sidewalks, curbs, gutters that we could tap into to start getting some of those done. If we just go put our curbs right at the Caltrans line, we have enough room, whether we end up with 6 lanes or stay at 4 lanes. I think that all of our lanes will fit, and a lot of that work then with the acceleration, deceleration leading up to those curb and gutters would be a big benefit, and we could start putting some landscaping in. For those properties that don't want to develop or maybe sitting there empty for the next 15 years, just have the city go in and make those improvements so we have continuous continuity and then have a lien against the property for, some point in time when they sell or develop and get a payback for those improvements. I could go on, but I've taken enough time, but those are my ideas of what the city can do to help start developing and generating more tax revenue. And the other thing I would say is I've also been preaching for 10 years that we didn't need more commercial development, we need more rooftops. And only now that Watson Ranch is underway, we're starting to get more inquiries and more people are starting to look. But we are simply, as Buzz said, we're at the mercy of who comes knocking at our door to say, well, we want this one. We want a 4-star restaurant. We want Trader Joe's. We want, the community wants all of these things, but they do not understand the financial realities of what it takes to get tenants in. Thank you, and I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate your input. I'll have the same question for you, Ross. Outside of land use and zoning, are there aspects, what are the aspects that you all go through in making your business decisions on development?
Yeah, you bet. So I've taken a handful of notes here in preparation for this call. I want to quickly say the reason we came to American Canyon was 3 things. Highway 29. Highway 29 has twice as many people pass on Highway 29 as there are people in the city of American Canyon. Number 2, the American Canyon staff was and is still welcoming and works well, communicates well with me and my staff. And 3 is the Broadway district specific plan. I and my staff look at that as a major CEQA document, and CEQA analysis has already been done. So therefore, any kinds of permitted uses or conditionally allowed uses should be a little bit of a streamlined process as it relates to the Broadway district specific plan. The guys before me and probably after me here, they've mentioned a lot of good things about market conditions. It is what it is. I echo their opinions. But the main thing what I wanted to inform all of you about is, and Rick touched on a little bit of this, there are other agencies from a county, regional / state and federal standpoint that have a say in what happens in development in American Canyon. Now that say very well may be discretionary or ministerial, right? I've written down all the ones that we dealt with our gas station on Lumbar and Napa Junction. The first one, and in no particular order, this is moving from county to region, state to federal. The Napa County Bike Coalition, the County Environmental Health Department, the County Environmental Health Department and Hazardous Material, the Environmental Health and Hazardous Material Department, the County Recorder's Office, the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, the Napa Airport Land Use Commission, the Regional Water Quality Control Board out of San Francisco, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District out of San Francisco, Caltrans District 4 out of Oakland. The gentleman, they mentioned PG&E and Caltrans. We've had to deal with them as well. All the different environmental impacts from a biologist, hydrology, and standpoints. And then the last one would be the Army Corps of Engineers. So as I've looked through this specific project in American Canyon and looked at the time it took to get entitlements and to start construction, and my staff time, my consultants' time, and me personally, my time, I've estimated probably 1,200 hours in dealing with these, dealing with kind of the wrong language here, but working with these other agencies that have a say in our property and your property in American Canyon. About 1,200 hours. On top of that, the fees that each one of these agencies have required from us is about $150,000. So if you take the amount of staff time, consultant time, and my time, plus the amount of fees that these different agencies require, right, just to get a wetlands permit, it costs $10,000. It equates to about 22% of our land value. And that's just county, region, federal. That does not include, and I won't get into it because I think, Jason, you mentioned in the email, we don't need to go to the American Canyon, the city of American Canyon, fees and time. This is, the things I mentioned is just the agencies that are outside the city control. I think from a standpoint of, analysis, and the guys on the phone call know much more about this than I do, but this is a huge impact. When you talk about 22% of my land value is now wrapped up in other agencies, and people who live in other cities and other parts of the Bay Area have a say in what's going on a 2-acre property in American Canyon, it becomes costly, and it just takes a while. So I hope that sheds some light on my opinion there. You're going to ask a second question, right, about the Broadway District Specific Plan?
Yeah, we're going to have everybody go through the first question first, and then we'll kind of touch on the second one.
Yeah, that's all I have for this part. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ross. We'll move over to Ernie. Kind of the same question. If beyond the land use and zoning pieces, what are the other factors that you have to look at?
Well, I mirror what Ross just said. Some of the regulatory agencies, federal and state, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Regional Water Quality Control Board. We have to deal with the California Fish and Wildlife. We have a creek running through our property, so all of the waters flow from our site. We can see the Napa River, where all these waters flow from American Canyon into Napa River, which then flows into the San Pablo Bay and then flows into the Pacific Ocean. So the regulatory agencies are extremely difficult to deal with. I know that the city's had some of their experiences as well, and we've coordinated jointly to get some things done. But that's really, those are the biggest challenges that we deal with. We know that going in, we employ the best experts we can to navigate through those, and I just want to recognize for those on the panel here, a lot of my fellow developers, and including the city, have used one of the best biologists I've ever met, Jeff Monk, and sadly Jeff Monk passed away 3 weeks ago. So just wanted to recognize that without Jeff's input and abilities to navigate those difficult waters, we may not be where we are today. So just want to make that recognition. More importantly, our biggest challenge with American Canyon was just recognition of what American Canyon was. As you know, we've been trying to attract national and international tenants to our project, uniquely structured for those types of tenants, and nobody knew where American Canyon was. Didn't know the name. There was no economic development. We've always attended many conferences across the country, attended by many of these types of tenants, and created that awareness of where it's located. It's a small city. I always describe it. It's a very small city doing really big things. And I've always enjoyed working with the city. Just as many of the other developers have stated here, it's been a joy to work with the city. But we have the state and federal agencies and Caltrans and all that to deal with. But you know, for most of us, we've got good engineers and support people and consultants to help us through that. And I think the city has seen that recognition and have even employed some of those same consultants in some of the city projects.
Great, Ernie, I appreciate your insights, and sorry to hear about Jeff. I actually didn't know that, so thank you for sharing that. Terry, you want to answer the same question? Besides the zoning and land use stuff, what are the other factors that you are having to consider in your project?
Sure, thank you. I actually taught a class last week down at USC. That's right, Bill Ross, University of Southern California. And no disrespect to my Cal alma mater, but a lot of bright kids down there. And the focus of the discussion of the class was, it's an hour and 45 minutes, it was Watson Ranch. And, you know, I break the real estate development business into 5 categories, just to kind of simply keep it in sort of a simple concept. 1 is entitlements, however you want to classify those. 2 is construction, 3 is marketing / leasing, 4 is financing, and 5 is operations. And so typically city, county, state, federal deal with entitlements. And the other, construction, marketing, leasing, financing, operations, those are all the challenges separate and apart. I'll come back to number 1 because I want to circle back to something that Rick said and some of the others. But in terms of construction, marketing, leasing, financing, and operations, there's lots and lots of challenges, and probably more so today than there's ever been. But one of the first ones is just schedule. I mean, we deal with certainty, and uncertainty is frankly one of our biggest enemies. And so when you're dealing with items 2 through 5, and any delay in schedule is obviously incredibly costly. 2, construction costs. I mean, we're battling probably a 50% increase over the last 24 months just in our infrastructure costs inside of Watson Ranch. Those are real numbers. I mean, there's just it's you know, separate and apart from actually getting product and materials on schedule. 3 is changing market dynamics. Buzz talked about it. Rick talked about it. You know, the market is ever changing, and what was attractive on the retail front today or a decade ago is completely different today. And then you have special interests. 4 would be just special interests, just entities along the way that have a handout, and you know, you have to pay as you go. Otherwise, you're gonna face opposition. 5 is ancillary stakeholders that I'll circle back to, and the ancillary stakeholders typically fall into 1. Those are basically all the city, county, state, and federal agencies that touch a project. Ross alluded to it, Ernie alluded to it, Steve alluded to it. 7, I think, you know, one of the big challenges out there today is environmental, is the sustainability, you know, protection of resources, 0 water footprint. All these things that are, you know, coming to the very, very, very top of the list, both in terms of, you know, our responsibility to the future, both as individuals and collectively. 8 would be just how do you get tourists to stop and spend money in town. 9 would be just the inertia that has occurred over the last 18 months. Inside of a lot of different agencies, including both private and public agencies. And then, you know, building into a lot of these projects, you know, how do you address future changes that you have no idea? You know, it's how do you see around the corner? So, I mean, those are some of the challenges that when you do a project that's going to take more than a year or 2, you really have to build in optionality, and you have to design it for absolute failure. You have to stress test it. You have to continue to stress test it. Like right now with Watson Ranch, we're in the process of starting to look at changes to the Watson Ranch specific plan. And that's just the evolution of a very large project. But Ross had mentioned, all the different agencies that he touched. I think we did over 75 city, county, state, and federal approvals in our entitlements over 17 years. And I think Rick brings up a really, really good example. It's both a chalkboard in theory example as well as a practical example. The city with their front yard, their front street, i.e. the Broadway district specific plan, undergrounding those utilities would increase home values in that city across the entire city, not just what touches Broadway district specific plan. It would increase everybody's home value, every business's home value. And so whether you Melrosed it, industrial revenue bond it, community facilities district it, whatever, I think that's something that I support 100%. And to wait for it to be done individually, project by project, I think, as Rick said, you're looking at decades. And having those utilities underground, especially today with everything that's happened in Napa County with fires, PG&E has all these new programs. I sat with the head of this new program the other day for 2 hours on a Zoom call. But undergrounding those utilities, putting in landscaping, putting in sidewalks, putting in ped, putting in bike, again, that boat just floats the underlying property tax, underlying value of that home immensely, day one. So I think, when I'm looking at one, I would circle back now to the first one, entitlements. And I think the challenge I would put to the city staff, to planning commission, to city council is, what are your relationships with your adjacent agencies? What are your relationship with the school district, the county, the city of Napa, city of Vallejo, the water departments, transportation? We've got a $1.4 trillion infrastructure bond that was just passed. Is there a discussion about having money go to Newell? That should be front and center. That's a shovel-ready project. And clearly is going to need help at the city, county, state, and probably federal level. And there's money to be begging for in that. You have a supervisor in Napa who I believe is chairman or vice chairman of MTC. And so this is a layup. This is an absolute layup. And so the challenge I guess I would put to staff is, at the very least, you should have a working relationship with these adjacent agencies, which then makes our job coming in and investing. Watson Ranch, there'll be $1 billion invested in that project over the next 10 to 15 years. One of the happiest guys in the world is John Tudor. And when he was at the American Canyon Parks Foundation events, he had a smile a mile wide. And so you're doing things, and I don't know if Ross said it or Steve said it or somebody else said it, you're doing things for the city, but for the county that no one else is doing. And so get rid of that chip and stand front and center and make these other people accountable. I'm not expecting you to have a relationship with the railroad. I'm not expecting you to solve things with Caltrans, but you should have a working relationship, since they have a road that goes right through your town. And I'm not going to sit here and bitch and moan that, about Army Corps of Engineers or U.S. State Fish and Wildlife or Regional Water Quality Board, or Ross forgot the Yokodahi Indian monitoring agreement I had to do. I'm not going to complain about anything. We all know that stuff. We all know that's part of our job. But you as a city, you should have relationships with these adjacent stakeholders, because when they can go out there by themselves and exact stuff from us where we're completely uncovered, unprotected, and open space, all it does is slow down what we're doing in your town. And the fact that NDUSD can sit out there and basically do what they do, or whomever else it is that sits out there, is a travesty. So I think that my challenge to you is, we know 2 through 5. We deal with that every day, and that's just a fact of doing what we do. but we shouldn't have to deal with either non-existent public agency relationships between the city and the other adjacent agencies, or relationships that aren't very good. And because of existing politics between two public agencies. That is really, really detrimental to what we do. So that's sort of my take on what we all do every day. And each of us does a little bit different product type. Each of just has a slightly different focus on the development side. But I would really like to see a couple of really big citywide improvements. Newell and the undergrounding of the utilities on Broadway, to me, that's low-hanging fruit. And there's no reason in the world that those can't be done in the very near term. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate all of your thoughts. Valerie, I know you're not a developer per se, but I was wondering the same question for you. If you've heard from your members who aren't here tonight, if there are any of the issues beyond the city of this control that you heard from your members that they focus on for their work.
Yeah, thanks you, Jason, for the opportunity to speak. Fortunately, all of the members that are on the call tonight are part of the chamber. We're very thankful to have all their support. I hope they all know that when they face issues, that they are welcome to come to the Chamber of Commerce. We are not a city entity. We're a nonprofit organization. We do have our own connections and our own resources that we're always welcome to lend those connections to the businesses. I do agree with what I'm hearing about the PG&E and the underground lines. I do hear that often. I hear about Caltrans and how challenging that is to work through. Clearly, the businesses that are investing into American Canyon are spending a lot of money, and they have heart here. And as a resident and as somebody who works in American Canyon, I'm thankful that there's people that see the value within our community and want to come in and invest. And I do believe we should put it at the forefront to make this process as easily as possible for these investors, the people that are spending time and energy to invest in our community and make it what we want to see. So, I just want to be a supporting voice that says whatever these investors need, whatever these people here on the call could use our resources, I believe it's in our best interest as the chamber, as the city of American Canyon, to really help solve these problems and really come to terms on how we can make this process easier. So, clearly I'm not a developer and I don't have insight on that, but I just want to show the support here for the people on the call that, I'm behind you, I'm rooting all the way, I'm for development, I'm for economic growth here, and whatever I can do to help make the process easier, I want you to know that you have my support as well as the Chamber of Commerce.
Great, thank you. Yeah, great.
Can I add one other thing? Because I think I just remiss in not including it before, but the group here on all sides, the council, staff, the developers, the chamber, I mean, there's a lot of collective skill set and experience and relationships. And I think the other thing that I would challenge the city staff and the group that stands behind you, the council, is, we deal in our own self-interest, but that doesn't and isn't mutually exclusive to what's good for everybody. And for instance, PG&E, I have a great relationship with PG&E. I'm working on a good relationship with Union Pacific and CFNR. And, I brought in 2 consultants that are ex-Caltrans guys that can navigate District 4 as well as anybody. And I think where I get frustrated is that this group of 4 or 5 or 6 of us on this call tonight, we have huge reach. And collectively, the amount of dollars that we're investing is enormous. But no one, I think there's this perception a lot of times that we're always on the other side of the table. It's always an adversarial relationship. I can tell you after 4 decades of doing this, you couldn't be further from the truth. And again, I don't know who said this to start the call, but most of us have long-term investments in the city. And the worst possible thing that can ever happen to us is the lawn doesn't get mowed, or the landscape median doesn't get taken care of, or the cigarette butt doesn't get picked up. So you have guys here that they care more than anybody else in the world, but I would challenge the city to bring us together on a regular basis and use our resources, because we have resources. Thank you.
Great, Terry. Thanks for that. Rick, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I really echo what Terry is saying, and all of us collectively literally have, let's just say, tens of millions of dollars that we've already invested in American Canyon, and I get asked oftentimes when I'm working on trying to, whether it be the Watson Lane annexation or other things that I don't have a vested interest in, but my response is always the same. I need American Canyon to be the best city it can be. And I think all of us collectively agree that the better we make American Canyon, it's obviously going to make our projects better. And, whether it be Buzz or Steve or any of them, and certainly myself, that have been here, 20 years and we not only develop, but we hang on to these properties long-term and have long-term goals of staying in American Canyon and furthering American Canyon. It's in our best interest, and we want to help. We want to be part of the solution. And oftentimes I feel like my voice is simply just not really heard, or yeah, okay, thanks for your input, and then it goes away. But to circle back with what Terry was saying is, I get it that we've had a adversarial relationship with Napa County since we incorporated. I understand that there's animosity between the school district and other public agencies. And it literally does not make any sense to me that, for us on a day-in-day-out basis, we have to identify the problem and then come up with a solution. And I don't understand why we, as people come and go over the last 25 years, council members have come and gone, board of supervisors come and gone, staff has come and gone, but this animosity seems to always be there. And I think that the council should have a serious look at how the city has been interacting with certainly the county and the school district specifically. We need the school district to educate our children. Therefore, they need us and we need them. We need to figure out how to come to a resolution. It should not be that hard. With Napa County, I'd say that they have been in the driver's seat for all these years, and American Canyon has kind of had to take it over the years. But we've grown up now. We're all big boys, and I think it's time to, as you all know, it's like we proved that the Airport Land Use Commission compatibility plan is outdated. It's inconsistent with the Aeronautical Act and the Caltrans Airport Land Use Handbook. But yet I've spent on my project, the recent project Oat Hill, I've probably spent at least $200,000 just addressing and trying to show them that they're wrong. Well, those are outside influences and it's probably cost me 8 months of time, delayed time, if not longer, in trying to get approvals. That cost, it has to go into your overall budget. And you all know the issue with the school district. There's no reason that we can't solve that issue and come to an agreement. and, let cooler heads prevail, and let's sit down, and they're not gonna get everything they want, we're not gonna get everything we want, but those relationships, and we have this huge zero water footprint problem in American Canyon. One of the things I would talk about later, but I want to mention now is I think one of the most important things the city can do is I know that we paid money for that future reservoir, but since we're completely dependent on the North Bay Aqueduct, we need to either secure better contracts or longer term contracts with Vallejo or whatever other municipality that we can go to. And because we as developers, we come in and say, well, this is a great project, but are we going to be able to get enough water for it? Is Terry going to get enough water for his houses? Are these other projects that we want to come along, and you spend these hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get entitlements, not knowing whether we have enough water to take care of it. So in addition to what I talked about earlier, I think that relationships, as Terry mentioned, and I appreciate that, Terry, I think that was spot on, but I think we also need to address water. That's an outside agencies that we need to work with. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. We've been convening now for, not quite an hour and a half, but an hour and 20 minutes, and I appreciate everybody's responses. We've captured a lot of question two in a lot of your responses. So I think what we want to do now is not go back around on question two, but instead go over and see if there's any public input, public comment, maybe from some of the attendees tonight. And then I want to give the council an opportunity to ask questions of you all and let them provide their input. So Mayor, if it's all right, we'd like to start to entertain public comment.
So public comment. Who would we have any interestingly questions raised? Do we have no attendees?
You're on mute, Teresa.
Yep.
Okay, there's a few hands up. I have Karen first. Go ahead, Karen.
Good evening, council and
Good evening.
and developers. I think you all had some very good points, and I appreciate that. I can't remember exactly who it was, maybe you, Terry, that had mentioned the utilities along the Broadway specific plan there. Just go ahead and try and get those put underground, and then have fees when somebody comes in and needs to do something. I think that's a great point, and kudos to you for that. That's it.
Thank you.
We have another speaker.
I do. I have Fran Lemos. Fran, go ahead. You're on mute.
I don't know how to do this. Am I on?
Oh, yes, you are.
on.
I can hear you, Fran.
Okay, yeah, I did it all by myself. First, I would like to thank Rick Hess and Terry and all the developers, because they have made our city what it is today. And I'm very, very proud of what they've done, really. I know when I came here, there was not even a store. I had to go to Vallejo or Napa. Now I can go to Safeway, I don't have to go out of our city, which makes me very proud. And I also would like to say they need to streamline it, because it is a lot of bureaucracy. And the other day I drove out and saw Amazon and saw all that those people, I forget the name of logistics, put in, and I see the road is coming through. Makes me very proud, because that road is really going to help the citizens of American Canyon. So I thank the city for getting our little section done. Our police department is wonderful. You can't beat them. And I'm just so proud to have the developers like Rick Hess that started out with our first little shopping mall, and it's great. And all the Canyon Corners and Safeway and Cherry's project, it's wonderful. And And the new people that are here, you know, they want a Trader Joe's. They just don't understand. If you want a Trader Joe's, you gotta have a lot of people here. They just don't understand how it works. So this is good to have all the developers here to explain to them, you can't have those big Trader Joe's stores without people. And they don't want people fighting over the service station that's already been approved. And they don't want, they think that you own a piece of property that you gotta keep it green for them. And it doesn't the way it works. When you own something, you have an entitlement to develop that. And anyway, I'm gonna get off because my 3 minutes is probably it, but I did want to say I'm very proud of all the developers here, and keep up the good work and get American Canyon on the map, which we will do with the rooms. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Brett. Speaker, please.
I have Beth Marcus. Go ahead, Beth, you're on mute.
Okay, well, it's great. I got to follow Fran. I get echoing, I echo Fran, everything she said. And I appreciate all of the points that the developers brought up tonight. And I hope that the city takes all of those points that they discussed at heart and work with them. And I gotta say, I was one of the people who said, you know, I want a steakhouse here in American Canyon. But I spoke with Rick, and he explained to me why that doesn't happen. And I appreciate that, Rick, I now understand, so I won't be asking for that anymore. But I like Fran, I love all you developers. You've done a fantastic job. You're making American Canyon beautiful. If there's anything I can do for any of you, just let me know. I love you all, and thank you very much for all that you're doing for us.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Beth. Next speaker, please.
I have no other hands up at this time.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll close public comment on this at this time. And I think probably, it's probably about time for the council to weigh in.
Yeah, Mayor, that was, staff would like to hear the council's perspectives on what we've heard tonight, and if there's any, thoughts about the plan itself and potential changes to that, or just questions, we're still gonna wanna kind of use the raised hand features, given all the number of folks you have on the screen. So, I think using the raised hand feature is gonna be necessary, but again, looking for the comments and questions from the council. So thank you.
There, here's my raised hand.
You probably don't have to.
Sorry, it's only fair.
Mayor Garcia, would you like me to call them? Because I can see the hands in order.
Yeah, well, I will comment first, guys. I really appreciate the input this evening. It has been very insightful indeed. Because I think, I've had an opportunity, one-on-one with everyone at some point, but to have a collective forum around the issues, highly informative. It really is. I really appreciate everybody's input this evening. It's been tremendous. I think the question on relationships with other jurisdictions, I think is very important. I mentioned at council meetings, I don't know if our attendees are aware of it. I have a monthly meeting with Mayor McConnell, Vallejo, and Mayor Steve Young of Benicia. It's just an informal lunch meeting we do just to go over mutual things. For example, one thing, just not that I'm giving direction, is more like comment, friendly invitation, or ask for support on water issues for American Canyon. Well, I know Robert McConnell's working on it with his staff. I know our staff's working on it. I don't need to jump in the middle of that. But just as a way of saying, here's a heads up, where this is an issue, it's important to both of us. We're working on it. I think those things are very important. And I agree. I think with the county, there's been a lot of antagonism for a long time. And sometimes I can get caught up in that and get very angry. On the other hand, I was reminding myself, well, let's take it up in a different context. Maybe I'll quote Rick Jagger on this. You can't always get what you want. But if you try real hard, you might find you get what you need. And I think that we just need to keep trying. Mine is to take an opportunity and grow the good wheat versus fighting the weeds. And I think with my view on no extension to South Kelly is the economic impact that affects the entire county of American Canyon, Calistoga. This latest incident with the power pole being smashed and brought down, closed off 29. Well, how many folks were late to work? How many were waiting for a delivery that didn't get it on time? What was the economic impact to the whole county? See, this is why we need to extend the rule to South Kelly, because it's an alternate route, because that's section of the highway is highly vulnerable. Anything that comes up, traffic light goes out, there's an accident, there's a flood, power pole gets smashed into. We need that alternate route. And I think that's us working together on that to for a mutual benefit to all of us. And there's just two of my comments. I can go on and on. And I'd like to put this evening a way of, what was it? I think I like to quote, brings together to use our resources. Yeah, thank you, Terry. Yeah, good point. I think we need to do that more often. I think we need to focus our attention on what's mutually beneficial, bring the between us and other agencies. For that, Councilmember Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank first all the panelists for participating and educating all of us on your profession and coming from your perception. For every one of your viewpoints. I really like the admiration that you all have for one another as developers. That speaks volumes in itself. But I gotta say, whoever said developers couldn't talk up a storm. So thank you. Well, what I've learned over the past year in my new role as city council, like Buzz mentioned earlier, is that it appears that companies actually pick us. We don't seem to be often picking them. And we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to make them pick us as a location? We heard tonight a couple of times that people, were asking, developers were asking other people to come here, and their answer was, well, where is American Canyon? I believe we're on a right track in the things that we're doing. I talked with Buzz earlier, and one of the things we talked about is what our curb appeal is to draw new businesses here in American Canyon. And I believe personally, and I think he mentioned it tonight, the safety that our town offers is a big deal. I don't know if you all heard over the last few days, companies like Walgreens are moving out of cities because of theft. So I think, like Fran mentioned today, I think we have a great police department. That's one value that I think will draw other companies here, is that we're a safe community, and companies will like to bring their businesses here. We have great police department, great fire department. Our residents are actively involved in making sure we stay safe. Our city is clean. We have a clean town. Our residents take pride of what we have here, and that speaks volumes. We have awesome schools. We have all the things that need to put us on the map. And I often go back to what Councilmember Oro used to say in 2018, is that we're a destination spot, and more I start to realize in my new role here, I believe that we have that capability of being a destination for people to come to and businesses to come to. So what I listen to, and I can't forget about the schools. We have great schools here as well, which is one of the main factors that bring people to want to even move their families here, which is why I moved here. I also agree with Terry when he mentioned that the key to American Canyon success is the relationships. I call myself a relationship guy. It's been what's made me successful in every venue that I've been involved in and all the career points that I've had. And those relationships are key. And I'll promote, us as a council to try to work on relationships with our peers in other cities from the north and from the south, to benchmark what they're doing to make things work. And we're a small town, so and I think we take care of ourselves. I think It's obvious from tonight that our developers, our long-term developers, that's what they want too, and they've been here for a long time. And I've met with each one of them, so I have a different perception of my own of developers. I mean, I used to think that they used to break your fingers and make you make decisions, according to what they want. But I really enjoy the conversations I've had, the one-on-ones I've had with each one of them, and still got all my fingers. So again, it's about the relationships. So I don't want to take up too much more time. I just want to say that I appreciate this forum tonight. I think this is a very educational piece. I think that the residents that are actually taking the time to listen in have been educated as well. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys for sharing your perspectives from a development standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, very clearly we all share an economic interest together. We do. Mr. Brock.
Steve, I think you're on mute.
I think that sometimes you try to keep stuff, or I do, fourth grade, second semester, then I don't get confused. And what you learn in our business, you got to tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. And I think the takeaway, Terry and Rick did a great job. Pierre's right. The relationship, my relationship with Terry and my relationship with Rick are two people I hold in high regard. Buzz has been very successful. I don't know him that well. I don't know Ernie that well, and I don't know Ross. I think what everyone wants you to understand is that we have confidence in the council, and we think the council isn't aware of all this extraneous stuff that's going on, and that relationships open doors. I disagree with Leon. Trying is the first step, okay, but the final step is succeeding. And I think that what we're saying is if the city promoted itself in a way to the development community that there can do, some of these other agencies will fall in line. Because in my opinion, many of those agencies, because of the lack of the relationship and the collegiality or whatever, take advantage by confusing the people of American Canyon as to what's really going on, and it just goes into like a circular loop in a computer. And if everybody gets on the same page, like I said, for sure Terry, Rick, and I talk, and I know Rick talks to Buzz, and I think that Terry hit on an important point. Singularly, maybe none of us have that big a bandwidth, but collectively, we touch a pretty wide swath of deals. And at the end of the day, the real estate business is a pretty small community across the country. I'm in Georgia tonight, okay? And I tell everybody about American Canyon and Fresno because that's where I'm from, and B, where I like to be, which is American Canyon. But I think that if the city, the end of it, relationships are pretty much individual and personal. I don't think there's anyone that doesn't like anyone on the council bad enough in any agency that the council couldn't foster those relationships and help remove the hardship. Terry's 100% right. All, Bay Area wall equality, the bug snitchers of America and all that, those are just everyday problems that's what we get paid to do to be able to solve the problem. And I was appreciative of Mrs. Marcus saying that she no longer wants a steakhouse. Well, I hope she wants it. What everybody has to understand, if you want these things, you have to support them. It's not just like it's a good idea.
Yes.
You have to support those those businesses. I continue to agree with David and Terry that the destination's there, okay? We do a lot in the wine business. I think that that 4 to 6 high-end wineries can get an hour jump on most other places by having the tasting room in American Canyon. And the wine business has changed. It's about the experience and all that, all the hoop-de-doo, not just the bottle of wine. It's the experience. And I can tell you, an hour up and an hour back makes a better experience, in my view. And you guys have to believe that you have something to offer, because the human mind won't allow you to portray yourself or conduct yourself consistently in a manner that you don't believe in, okay? And for Terry to do what he's doing, he's got to believe in American Canyon. Buzz had to believe in American Canyon, okay? And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but there's a lot of people that pop off in the popcorn gallery when somebody's trying to do something that could give a rip about truly give a rip about American Canyon. You guys know who that is, and I think that if you can help foster the relationships to get past that, it would make it better for American Canyon. And regardless of what anybody says, Buzz's success helps us, Ernie's success helps us, Rick's success helps us, the city's success helps us, because nobody wants to be the deal that went bust anywhere. Because let me tell you, a deal going bust travels through the real estate finance industry, and the old deal about 13 good deeds to overcome one bad one. It's about 1,300 if you had a bad real estate deal. Long and the short of it is, we need your support in the interagency arena more than anything else in our world. Your support is monumental, because once these other people understand, that you have something, that they're not driving the bus. You can ask Mark. I told Mark 3 or 4 years ago, Mark, let's do a road plan that's bigger than anything these guys can dream of, okay, and make them believe we're going to do it, and then they'll come help us. But until then, they're like a lot of people in life. It's easy for someone else to tell you what's good enough for you, okay? Don't settle. Do not settle. That's the wrong approach, in my opinion. I'm going to shut up because Terry did such a good job and Rick did such a good job. But I just think that we can't tell you enough how much we need your help, and we are not adversarial. Now, we will fight and we'll argue with a sign, but, okay, we are supportive of American Canyon in general. Thank you.
Thank you. Your comments, we'll take it. I think you're right. The objective is to succeed. Those relationships are very important. Thank you. Vice President Joseph.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you. Number one, I think this idea was a great idea to have a workshop where we can hear developers and have a very good, frank conversation about what works and what we can improve. And second, I definitely want to echo the kudos to some of the suggestions thrown out. As simple as saying we need to work on better working relationships with the agencies that we all deal with. Yeah, that's like the basics, but Terry's got a good point. We need to work on that. We need to recognize that we're all on the same page, even if we have different roles. Like everyone said, our success is going to help Buzz, Steve, everybody else, and vice versa. So we're all on the same boat, and there's no point in saying you have to stay on your side. So a more informal, blended relationship, I think, is a success. Rick's ideas about master planning or master permitting with Caltrans or PG&E, really is a pretty great idea. It's almost as good as his idea about the master drainage study that I've suggested to staff a few times. I don't know if I recognized it was Rick's suggestion or not, but I'll publicly say, you know, most of my good ideas I got from somebody else, and these are some good ideas. So number one, a great evening, great ideas. Number two, I do think that the city can play a more active role in the economic development process. You know, we may not, you know, call the shots like anybody else, but if we want to develop some kind of a master permitting process, that's going to take somebody's time. If we want to build good working relationships, that's going to take time. I mean, if we want to focus on something, Councilmember Oro has that humongous deal or whatever. You know, I butcher sayings a lot, but basically, if we want to take on something like creating a food and beverage niche that doesn't currently exist, but we think it could be successful, well, that's going to take some time. So it really gets down to we can't have an economic development strategy based on, you know, the part-time assignments of 4 or 5 people. I think this is all suggesting to me that we really do need to think about a dedicated position. Now, how you do that, you know, whether we contract with the chamber and they go out and hire somebody, whether we do it in-house, you know, how we pay for it, or who do we reassign, those kinds of details, I think we need staff to explore and come back with ideas. But for me, I'm thinking if we really want to be successful, we're going to have somebody who can be specifically assigned and is the point person, and his or her success is based on outputs, you know, how well we do, how well we build this community. So those are my main points. The only other thing I'd like to suggest as it relates to kind of the homework assignment here on the draft ED plan, I would agree it reads as if it were a bigger city and this is the, you know, the 2-year work plan. We're not that bigger city. We don't have a dedicated staff. So I think it's a good technical reference document, but I think we need to start at a 30,000 foot level and say, what should our economic development goals be? What kind of infrastructure things can we do to facilitate it? You know, and kind of go up a few thousand feet instead of, you know, what is essentially a work plan for 2 years. So those are my comments. Again, excellent ideas. And I really appreciate it. As some of you know, I've had a good working relationship, or I hope I've had a good working relationship with several of the developers, or I probably had a terrible relationship at one point and then got better and then got worse. But, you know, I think that is the definition of a good working relationship. So I want to personally extend my appreciation to some of you that have been here, you know, for the long haul. I appreciate your efforts. I appreciate the fact that you hung in there, and I hope you're actually getting some economic value out of all of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Chairman Mcgrath, would you want to comment on at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to circle back to what Mark said, and I appreciate, Mark, your comments and also the focus on what's next. You know, again, just what developers face every day is somebody's always trying to basically put you out of existence. There's something that is, you know, there. Sometimes it's seen, sometimes it's unforeseen, but it's really designed, you know, it's got mortality attached to it. So when I'm looking at things, I always look at this as a shipping lane with icebergs. And I think what happens in these cases is a lot of times people are looking at, you know, the iceberg 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 shipping lanes down. The only iceberg I'm worried about every single day is the one right in front of me. Because if I hit that, I'm dead. And so I look at that report, I appreciate where it comes from, I appreciate the effort that went into it. But I think what the city has to decide, and, you know, if we're not a part of this, we being this bigger representation of the development or smaller representation of the development community in American Canyon is, what is the one that you want to get accomplished, and what's the time frame attached to it, and what are the metrics? It's easy to start, it's hard to finish. Don't mistake motion for progress. All of these things can have metrics attached. The relationships can have metrics attached to it, really simply. And what I've experienced with the relationship of adjacent agencies is I have to actually go negative, I have to go backwards to get to neutral, to then build a relationship. That should never happen. And so I think whatever you choose, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just one issue. I think there's 2 or 3 things here that have massive impact. And one of them could be very short term, one of them could be midterm, one could be longer term, but these have very key metrics attached to it that are not metrics that you circle back to once a year. These are metrics that you deal with every single day, and you're checking yourself to see what your metrics are. And so that's what I would encourage you, instead of having a 75-page report, this is one simple page that has whatever your focus is, and then whatever you need to accomplish on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis to get this done. And you may find that you have to back up and or rotate around that iceberg, do whatever to get to that metric. But I would not mistake motion for progress, and I would not focus on secondary or tertiary issues. I would pick the one that has the greatest impact, that's going to float the most boats. And to me, it's most of them I think have all been discussed tonight, and it's up to you to figure out which ones you want to do and then what are the metrics attached to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Oro.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a remarkable discussion. I want to thank all the developers for being here this evening. I just wish it was a little bit more well intended from the public, because I think they would find this absolutely fascinating. Also buttress our comments and requests for Trader Joe's and the realities of actually making that happen. They don't have to hear it from me, they got to hear it from you guys. Mr. Hawley, I think we were looking at to provide direction to staff regarding the completion of the draft economic development plan. When I grabbed the packet and I popped that open, I was reminded that I wasn't really impressed with the economic development plan in 2018 when I first saw it. And I felt like then it was taken on a little bit too much. And as the years have progressed, it's been like 4 years now since then, come to learn, the power that actually we have and the influence we have, and that's a lot of it is in land use, in what we're doing. And I like staff's recommendation of, how to approach it from that way, and I think we're having that discussion here. There are some ideas this evening that I hadn't even thought about, and I think if they're real, are genius. And I'm talking specifically, the idea is genius, not the person who said it is genius, is the master PG&E plan for undergrounding those lights, right? And I think we need to explore that as soon as possible, really, because as I look at that highway today, and I got stuck in that traffic where the light got taken out, or the power line got taken out this weekend, and I'm like, what can we do? On the way home, I saw people walking down the highway straight in front of Al's, so a whole family of people, there's like 8 of them, just walking down the highway. And I never feel right when people are doing that. It just doesn't feel right for safety reasons and for visual reasons as well. That's something that we have to explore, and I think that's a creative idea that, to what has been said here, really moves the needle on the highway and what we can do. I don't know too much about the drainage study. I haven't really been briefed on those issues, but it sounds like it seems to be a big deal between Mr. Hess and Mr. Vice Mayor Joseph. It might be legitimate. So let's have a look at that and understand that, because these two things here in themselves, and then I think there was another one, the Caltrans master egress thing, right? So, all right, you're not going to slow down the speed limit to 35 miles an hour, even though families are walking across that highway. You're not going to widen the highway, but at least give us some egress access. Can we begin those conversations there? Those three things together are very actionable things that the city can take that actually have bigger impacts economically, I believe, than anything else that's in this economic development plan. Understanding that, setting the goals, and then I think it really opens it up to, hey, here's an attractive city, here's a message to the development and investment community. The city is doing things right to create an economic engine for this region. So those are my comments, and I just think overall, I don't recall being a fan of the economic development plan when it came out. I felt like it was convoluted, too widespread, and I think the council at the time was guilty of actually being private investors or wanting to be private investors, and we drove it that way. The power that we have is elsewhere. Yep, okay, that's it. That's my comments. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Aldamas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who's with us tonight. We're used to this. We do this every Tuesday, and you guys did not have to spend your time with us, but we greatly appreciate all of your input. Believe it or not, I agree with everything Councilmember Oro just said. I think that those three things help serve other purposes as well, right? So for instance, undergrounding PG&E utilities help us prevent fires, which have been a major concern for our region as of late. Actually, Rick Hess and I have also spoken about the master drainage study, and if I understand it correctly, it doesn't make sense that we don't have one. We did a CEQA for BDSP in order to help developers get things built more quickly and streamline and save some money, but we didn't do a master drainage study. So how do we expect people to build stuff and put drains in without knowing which way they should be tilted? I also agree with what Vice Mayor Joseph said in regards to potentially hiring someone to devote full time to economic development. Yes, we're not a big city, but we are a rapidly growing city. I think one of you guys said we're a small city doing big things earlier today, and that's very accurate. We're at a point in our city's history where we're creating the history. We're building, this is us growing right now, and we want to get it right? We don't want to, I also agree with Councilmember Oro. I was never impressed with the economic development plan that we did initially, and we don't want to be in a place where 10 years from now we're looking back and we're like, oh my gosh, we should have done that differently. And I think having a person devoted full-time to economic development is going to help us get to where we want to be. Lastly, I heard a common theme tonight from the developers in that our fees are too high and we take too long to get things done. Specifically, I think Steve said that our financiers are the same everywhere we go, but because things happen so slowly in American Canyon, it's hard for us to hold ourselves accountable to our financiers. So one, I want to ask the developers, how do we compare in terms of our fees and our timelines with other cities that you've worked in? And then two, I want to ask staff, are there things that we can do to reduce costs and help streamline processes so things don't take forever? And that's it for now.
Good, thank you. Mr. Hess?
As much as I truly respect both Mark and Miriam, I think this economic study should be thrown in the trash. It's absolutely lip service. I went through this and I have scribbled all over it. I wasn't part of it back when the study took place, but it's pie in the sky ideas and dreams and goals that are literally unachievable. And to hire somebody, the city already tried that a few years back, hiring an economic development person. I think they lasted about a year. And to my knowledge, I have no clue if they brought one single, thank you, Buzz. They brought zero value to the city. What I think we're trying to say as developers is there are there are metrics that we could put in place. Let's talk about the things that need to get done. Green Island Road needs to get done. Support to get the Newell Drive extension extended through the Hess property needs to get done. Figuring out our water situation needs to get done. The underground utility idea needs to get done. Caltrans needs to get done. The staff has, and certainly Jason with his engineering background, has all the knowledge necessary to make that happen. The problem is there's not enough time in the day. There's not enough bandwidth to do that. I would suggest that the city consider bringing on not an economic developer, bring on somebody that has engineering experience and experience in getting those projects done. Somebody that we as developers can go to and interact with on a daily basis, and that is coming to us, as Terry suggested earlier, and using our resources and our relationships to literally help get that done. There's no reason that it should take this long to get some of these infrastructure deals done, but I think it's just simply a matter of having enough bandwidth and enough staff that is capable of actually executing. That's what we need to do. We need somebody like that. An economic development person cannot help us, cannot help Buzz get one tenant, cannot help me get one tenant, they literally cannot help us. We need somebody that we can go to and offer our support, even if it's not our own projects, but because it will make American Canyon better, because it will help us be in a position to develop more properties on Broadway and Highway 29. And the last thing I respectfully disagree with Mark and Miriam, and I apologize for it, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from. The final thing that has not been discussed tonight is, and because we didn't go into what can the city do, in terms of our entitlement processes, which maybe we need a whole nother night to study that. But we can do everything that we want to, but unless we have an updated general plan, some of these projects that might come in, my fear is that we're opened up to be challenged, and we end up in lawsuits because our CEQA document is challenged, or our inconsistency, our general plan consistency is being challenged. That should be at the top of the list, that we need to get our general plan and quit talking about it and figure out if we want to spend money as a city to generate money, we want better tax revenue. Let's get our general plan update completed, including dealing with all of the properties that are within the D zone. And secondly, figure out how to bring more flexibility within the Broadway district plan. That's enough for my soapbox, but I would encourage the city and the council to look at their budget and figure out how can we bring on and get more help, rather than the staff that's overwhelmed on a day in, day out basis with, being faced with multiple challenges every day. Let's bring somebody and assign them specifically. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I think I'd like to comment this time. I think there's a role likewise for our Chamber of Commerce of American Canyon, and that's the marketing of American Canyon. I think that's the opportunity. I think Valerie's done some very creative stuff. I mean, that Meet Me in the Street thing was awesome. I don't know how many comments I got all over town and those of you who attended, I'm sure you would attest to that as well. But I think there's a linkage, obviously, I'm appreciating this conversation between the development community and Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce, I think, could be the one to work with that to get there's the incredible opportunity we have. We have land to build stuff on, both industrial and housing. We're building an incredible amount of housing. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Rick. In American Canyon. The marketing piece of that, if you want to build your business here, and hopefully something that's, I'm thinking high-tech, pharmaceutical, something that pays a whole lot of money. Your workforce can live right here in American Canyon. Your commute time could be 5 to 10 minutes from where you live to where you work. But you can't beat that. I think there's an opportunity there to see that as well. I think there's using all our resources, and I think that to me is the brain trust we have here within the development community and our Chamber of Commerce to be able to market American Canyon to our advantage for all of us. And even if it maybe involves the Chamber survey, what are people interested in town? What do they want? What consumers want? Trader Joe's, that's a ways off. There's a reality issue with that. But on the as you're building retail spaces, what do consumers looking for that they're buying out of town? Can't we bring that here? Let's see, I was trying to look for who was up next. I think it might have been Mark. Yes, Vice Mayor Joseph. And then I think I saw Buzz and then Terry. Okay.
Yes, a couple of things. Number one, I don't want to get into a protracted dialogue on what the job position should be or whatever, but a couple of things. A, I admit the person we hired 10 years ago didn't work out. And positions like economic development directors or a whole lot of things really depends about 100% on the person you hire. If you get a good one, they're going to do an outstanding job no matter what you call them. If you get a marginal one, they're just going to collect a paycheck until they move on. So with that caveat, whatever we call this person and whoever or wherever it comes, the key issue is to do some of the great ideas that have been thrown out here is going to require bandwidth. We aren't going to get it with the existing staff, so we've got to figure out something to create that bandwidth, and we'll leave it with that. How we get there is a good discussion for another day. The second point I want to make is to remind everybody we're currently going through a project initiation document for the 29 corridor. And we're debating 6 lanes and roundabouts and all of that, but what gets lost in all that dialogue is kind of the baseline. Mm-hmm. The baseline is sidewalks, bike paths, landscaping, undergrounding the power lines and all of that, and that's the kind of funding that Caltrans probably has. So what we need to appreciate is as we finish that process and get ourselves into Caltrans queue, we're going to see the undergrounding that occurs and the sidewalks, bikes, etc., all the neat stuff on our edges that we're all talking about. We'll spend the next 10 or 20 years debating whether we get roundabouts or interchanges or whatever. But the exterior, the side, I don't know what you want to call the welcome mat portion, I think could be happening in the next 3 to 5 years because of Caltrans process and getting ourselves in their queue. So I think it's important not to lose sight of that, because that will certainly make it safer, but more importantly, from an economic development point of view, will obviously pump up values, as Rick pointed out. So don't lose sight of that Caltrans process that we're in the middle of. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Butler.
Thank you, Mayor. So following up on Rick's comment about the kind of infrastructure support, we in a sense have a model with Green Island Road, already started. We have to add some bandwidth to, bring in an outside civil or engineer to help oversee it. But I think that's a great model for us to look at. When we developed Napa Junction, we had the advantage. We undergrounded maybe a dozen or so power poles, and 15 years ago it was 50,000 a pole. Now it's probably 200,000 a pole. But we still have the advantage of the economies of scale. But I do like as city engineer or private sector engineer to help manage those infrastructure projects, because that is the most important thing we can offer as a curb appeal. Is these 60, 70,000 cars drive through our community every day. It's that massive a number. The second piece is on the marketing economic development. Yes, when we had the previous person, her marketing assignment included calling me and calling our brokers. So it's, I would say that we already have an economic development office in town, and that is the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce's job is attraction and retention. Attract new businesses and retain the existing ones we already have. They're the ones who have their finger on the pulse. They're the ones who I support. I think the city, instead of hiring some new employees, should defer dollars towards the chamber to help them in our marketing. Final comment is relative to diversification of businesses. When I was involved with starting the New Tech High School 20 some years ago, the Napa County economy was 80% wine, and maybe it was 30 years ago. Fast forward 30 years, it's still 80% wine. So it is very challenging to diversify. Ernie's done a great job with Napa Logistics, with IKEA and Amazon. But I was actually involved in the relocation of the Redwood Credit Union's corporate campus. And they identified South Napa and specifically American Canyon as a location to locate. But when we're looking at sites in American Canyon, we really don't have one for a corporate campus. So that's why they ended up at the airport area. They'll have 400 employees in that building when it's all said and done. Which brings, how do they tie into American Canyon? How do we benefit from them? Well, number one, our school system generates the right type of workforce that goes to work there. And then secondly, on an infrastructure, having Devlin Road connect to our city. Then the airport area, the infrastructure, and the office opportunities in the airport area can connect to what we're doing in American Canyon. So it's been said a lot of times in this call, but the greater good component, the rising tide component, how these areas all benefit one another. I started out working on Ernie's project. I obviously initially started out working on the airport area, but all these pieces do spin together. Terry's new housing project has a huge benefit to me for Napa Junction. Those are all my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Oral, I think you were next.
Yeah, so just a quick comment on this economic development role. It isn't an economic development role in a traditional sense where somebody's trying to drum up business. I think it is, something that either falls under public works or something, anybody that comes in community development who just focuses on these big things that drive economic development. And, if the council comes to an agreement on what those may be, maybe then we become a higher, and it's a special identified role for that. And if we can't identify a full-time employment for that, then, maybe it might be a consultant of sorts. But that's what I was thinking. And as Vice Mayor Joseph said, don't want to get into the details, but I do want to clarify that it isn't the person or the role that we had 10 years ago. I think it's a lot more than that.
Mr. Mcgrath?
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple of things, and then I'm probably going to sign off in a few minutes. But again, I appreciate, all the time and effort. It's actually, I was thinking about in 4 decades of doing this, this is one of the more interesting dialogues I've participated in, because the public is sitting there, hopefully some of them are watching this. And you don't typically get an opportunity to have this kind of unburdened dialogue between a whole bunch of different folks that oftentimes are sitting across the table with each other. So thank you all for setting that up. So number one, like I said earlier, I think American Canyon, if there is a chip on the shoulder, get rid of the chip. Because you're doing stuff that virtually no one else in the county is doing. And ultimately, I think a large part of the county, I rented a house in St. Helena, and like I said, I met with a city council member yesterday or this morning, I can't remember. And it's just fascinating to me, how out of touch they are. And I think Buzz mentioned, these factories/wineries that aren't paying any traffic impact fees. But yet they still want to blame traffic on American Canyon. And I can tell you, riding my bike on Monday mornings to go get coffee at 6 a.m. downtown St. Helena, and I'm watching the trucks coming into the valley nonstop, backed up for miles. That has nothing to do with American Canyon. That has to do with the fact that the jobs housing balance up valley is completely out of whack, and they virtually have no way to solve it. So I would say stand proud. You're in a place that is, I think literally you can run the table for the next few decades. And I think in terms of economic development, developers are in essence are some of the most creative people that you'll ever run up against. And they will find the opportunities if they're standing on a canvas, on a campus canvas that allows for businesses to come. So what the city wants to do is not necessarily, your job is not to go out and develop an economic plan. Your job is to get rid of things that are outside of our scope and scale, i.e. underground utilities. Put sidewalks in so people can walk up and down Broadway and with landscape trees, etc. So to back up what Rick had said earlier, I read the economic plan, and honestly, it lost me about 5 pages into it. I don't support hiring an economic person. I think everybody on this call has a responsibility at their level, mayor to mayor, council member to council member, city manager to city manager, public works director to public works director, developer to developer. That is what is going to change the public agency relationships. And then working together as a team, they can't pick us apart. They can't pick us off things. Right now, each one of us individually can be picked off. We can be picked off by the city of Vallejo, the water department. We can be picked off by NBUSD. We can be picked off by PG&E, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if we're all standing together on the same side, again, we're not always going to disagree. You don't want to always agree. But if we're all on the same side, working on the same team, we can't get picked off, and that's where the true strength lies. I think the other thing is Rick mentioned, general plan update. Move that forward. Because I think that what that does is it sets the table. Again, it's one of those, create that canvas, create that campus that is a uniform platform across the entire city. And that also helps when you're dealing with EIRs and CEQA and all the other elements that are kind of come up. And so, again, I don't support hiring an economic development person. I support hiring the person that Buzz alluded to, which is somebody that can work on the final stages of whatever we need on Newell Drive, or work on the undergrounding plan, or work on helping Jason finance the improvement of the Broadway district specific plan. Leave the marketing, leave the leasing to the guys that are on the other side here tonight, in Brock and Rick and Ross and Buzz and so on and so forth, and Ernie. Leave that to us. So anyway, thank you again. I'm going to sign off in a few minutes, but really appreciate this, and hopefully we can do this a lot sooner than later.
Hey Terry, before you sign off, can you answer my question about where we stack up? Because I know you've done developments in other cities. So in terms of our fees, like, are we more expensive than most cities? Are we about the same? And in terms of our timeline, like, do we move slower than most cities? I guess, except for Oakland, because they're a hot mess right now, but.
Yeah, I would say, as I alluded to earlier, one of the true downsides of shelter in place COVID over the last 18, 20 months is there's a lot of public agencies, a lot of cities in particular, municipalities and counties that literally have been, they're ground to a stop. I'll say hats off to American Canyon. Your ability to move to that virtual platform, city manager Jason Hawley, and do it quickly, expeditiously, and continue to refine it, huge. Miriam asked me the other day, is city not to be named, could I get in touch with the fire chief? And I said, I could spend the next 20 months trying to get in touch with the fire chief and I would have no luck. And I've done a lot of development in that city. American Canyon, I can reach out to Chief Cahill almost anytime, morning, noon, and night, and he'll get back to me. So, hats off to what the city has done. To your question, Miriam, I wish on the Watson Ranch project, I had agreed to pay city impact fees rather than face 50% increase in the master backbone cost. because it would have been way cheaper to pay the impact fees. But I would say I'm a little bit of an unusual animal here on this phone call because it took me 17 years to get to where I got, but now I have a DA, I have a development agreement. So that development agreement gives me great certainty, guidelines to move very expeditiously to planning commission or city council on design permits and vesting tentative maps and so on and so forth. So I would say generally my sense is, you know, this city is probably, and I hate to say this out loud, is the lesser of evils when it comes to other municipalities, but I wouldn't compare yourself to other cities. I would look at this and say, we have an opportunity to create the golden city. And I really, truly do believe that. And I think as Steve alluded to earlier, changing somebody's travel plans by 2 hours and creating an experience for them is enormous. And I tell you, Calistoga can't do that. St. Helena can't do that. They can't change 29. They can't change the Silverado Trail. The Silverado Trail was out last week for whatever, 10 days because the river knocked it out between Pratt and Pope. You can't believe the traffic in St. Helena during the middle of the day. It was staggering what moving the trail traffic to St. Helena did to that city. So I would say, generally speaking, you're probably on par on impact fees. You're probably slightly better on approvals. But I don't think that's the litmus test. I really don't. I wouldn't compare myself with anybody. I'd set the standard and make them come to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry.
Mr. Brock, you have a comment?
To answer Miriam's question, my answer would be that your fees aren't a problem. The disconnect between the city and all the other agencies is extremely expensive to the developers. But the fees on paper, get me done, I'll be happily pay the fees. And I think that's what Terry was saying. All these, everybody looking from a handout. None of us don't want to pay a living wage. Okay, all that, sue me and drag it out. But show me that those people care about American Canyon, okay? And then get the general plan update, get it done. Good Lord, get that thing done. So I never agree with Buzz, but I totally agree with him on the Chamber of Commerce. I don't remember the lady before, she got the ball rolling. The new lady is great. You guys all know that Bill from our place is very supportive. I think Terry gave great insight. I think Rick gave great insight. I read it kind of the way that Mark and David explained it. They were calling an economic developer. They're looking for the cheerleader of all cheerleaders, okay, that can get something done. All this stuff, whether you want to admit it, in your job, everything's measurable, everything has metrics, and everyone's performance, in my mind, mine gets graded, we get graded basically pound of product delivered. Everybody has to be measured or they don't know what the score is. So I think if we all look at it that way, we move ahead. Anyway, thank you guys for the opportunity. I think that the other guys provided great insight. Ernie brought a lot of jobs to town. Buzz brought a lot of sales tax to town. God bless him, okay? Inch by inch, it's a cinch. By the yard, it's hard. The reason all those things hung around is because of the truth. Thank you. I'm with Terry. I got to sign off. I'm old and it's 3. I'm in Georgia, so.
Yeah, you're on the East Coast. We got family. I don't know, it's late hour. It's probably about 11 o'clock. At least 12 o'clock by now. All right. Thank you very much for your input. Well, with that, I think sounds like we've had a tremendous, useful, productive conversation tonight. A lot of insight for me. I think, certainly good to hear. We've had this issue of what to do with the power lines on State Route 29, well, the car crashed the other day, and it's not a good reason why we need to underline it. So, yes, I think that's probably what the visibility looks like. Too often I get that, where's American Canyon? You just drove through it. There's nothing on the main route through town that really says American Canyon. And I think that opportunity is out there before us. That's kind of high on my priority list. I think I've been brought with enough information to have a different perspective than I had before. I thought later that might come later, but no, I think it moves it up. That makes sense. And for me, and I think for us as well, we need to get Newell to South Kelly. I mean, that's vital to our economic base as well as the entire county of Napa, from here all the way to Calistoga. And I think that's the collegial, collaborative discussion we need to have with all jurisdictions. All right. Anything further, Mr. Holly, before we wrap it up?
I know this has been extraordinarily helpful. Just wanted to thank all of our panelists for joining us again tonight. Thank you for spending your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and experience. Lots of feedback, a lot of notes we were taking, and thank you for the council for your time also, and staff. So again, everyone have a good evening tonight. Thank you for all your ideas. We got what we needed, Mayor and Council, and so thank you.
Thank you for that. You know what, it's been a great evening. I think we should do this again down the road. I think we'll pick a time, but thank you for all the information this evening.
Thank you.
That being said, we've concluded our meeting for the evening. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, American Canyon.